Welcome, Sam.
Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. So I'm not of this place, so I'm going to acknowledge things in my own way tonight. Very quickly, about me, us kind of honorary Kiwis like to quickly ground ourselves and then dive into everything. So very quickly, I'm the product of an academic and an entrepreneur, which I thought were two worlds that would never meet. And then I found out whilst I was running a social labs that they do. And I got very confused and very scared that I was becoming my parents. I grew up in the UK, moved over to Australia for a couple of years and then over to New Zealand, and now I'm back again with my baby boy. And in that journey, I've been involved in a couple of social labs, and most sort of recently remotely through the work with Zaid. So I'm going to just jump in and explain a little bit. What I kind of wanted to talk about tonight was almost the intersection of design and social labs. I think sometimes it's not really talked about all that much, or it's just kind of implicit. So I kind of wanted to talk about that intersection, and I guess particularly with social design or participatory design, it almost sits with the who is designing. And who is making the decisions about the design. And social labs is almost an attempt to, I guess, democratise the design process somewhat, so that the people who are traditionally being designed at are kind of brought more into the process, not just towards kind of consultation, but beyond that, into actively designing themselves. So, just to give you a real quick scene setting about social labs, I realise not everyone will have read the book or kind of watched the movies or anything. So there's one key kind of mindset shift that social labs are about. And that mindset shift is about moving from strategic planning as a dominant way of tackling complex problems into a prototyping mindset. So actively experimenting. And I think traditionally most design, whether it's been service design, product design, industrial design, the design industry has kind of largely had to operate within that strategic planning context as a way to address complex problems. And I'm really interested in this shift now as to how design is going to change, morph, and become kind of part of this new generation or next wave of how we tackle complex problems. So part of the prototyping world. We've already briefly talked about social labs being social in their nature, so this is about diversity of the people involved. So this is about horizontal diversity, so not just kind of a horizontal diversity of people's skills, so it's not that we've just got an engineer and a mechanic and a designer in a room together. This is actually about the society and everybody that's being affected by a problem being in the room. Experimental, I've already talked to a little bit about prototyping mindset and kind of iterative design. And systemic is the attempt to always be kind of looking back to the root causes of the problems rather than just trying to stick a band-aid on top of things. I've been trying a range of different ways to explain what social labs are to people. And one of the ways that I've started to talk about is they're three things all together at once. But to break it out, social labs are basically a strategic response to a complex problem. So they're a way of intervening in that complex problem. They're often a space, whether that's physical or conceptual. Often it's actually a physical place like this, but not always. And they're also a practice. So when I talk about practice, I'm really talking about kind of the mixture of the methods and the tools and the techniques, all of those things together. Much like cooking is actually a practice when you, it's not a methodology. So you're not going to go through step by step. You're going to go through you're going to take your whole range of skills and ingredients and approaches. So social labs aren't a methodology, and that's one of the key differences that a lot of people kind of often think it is. So I just wanted to make that now. So this talk is kind of influenced by a lot of my recent time working on labs, but it's also influenced by I'm currently studying a Masters of Design and looking at social labs practice kind of a bit more conceptually. So there's some time on in the trenches doing the work, but there's also me starting to step out and think a bit more abstractly. So I'm becoming really, really interested by social labs as a container. And so this is, I guess, particularly tailored towards you as designers or people interested in the design sector. I think there's a huge potential for more designers to flow into kind of the social labs sector, or whatever social labs are at the moment. So that's very much about kind of the fuzzy front end of design, as Liz Sanders would say. But social labs are also kind of porous in their nature. So people are going back out into their communities and working these ideas through and doing things. So social labs are as much about how we diffuse the design into the world as they are about the design itself. So I think that's a really important aspect of social labs that often is also forgotten. We think about what happens inside the space, but we don't think about how we get those things out into the world. Okay, so to ground some of this, I just wanted to say that social labs, we can draw all of the triangles we want, we can draw all of the pretty pictures and the process diagrams, but this is what social labs really look like. It's just a group of humans together working on things. So this is a photo from the first kind of iteration of a process that we ran in New Zealand, which brought around about 35 young people together to start tackling youth mental health problems in New Zealand. And we ran a 6-week full-time intensive program for these guys, which was just an amazing experience and kind of our first delving into social labs.
So were they designers or mental health consumers?
They were a complete mixture of people. So they were all under 35, but we were going for that vertical diversity of mixture of techies, mental health professionals, designers.
Oh, sorry, when I say consumers, that's people that consume services of mental health.
Yep, so we had some people in there, some people who worked on the academic side, some people who worked in the health sector. Yeah. This is another photo recently from my trip to Chicago, where I was in November on the ground. So this is the Grove 3547 lab, which Roller Strategies is working with the Chicago Community Trust, pretty much on, so the direction is around resilient livelihoods, but largely tackling gun violence, racial inequality, systemic poverty. So this was a beautiful process, and again, humans in a room working on things. So this is what a social lab is. Put this picture in your head, that'd be great. So I mentioned this is going to be some of my musings about the world, largely at the moment about social labs, rather than trying to particularly give you an insight that maybe Zaid could or someone else running a lab might. So this first piece has been something that's been brewing for a long, long time and kind of surfaced first over in New Zealand, which basically at the end of an evening, we'd been running a full-day process, which was going to last for 3 or 4 days with a group of people. And at the end of the first day, a young Māori guy turned to me and said, I don't really feel like I could do anything today. Just couldn't get involved. Well, why was that? Like, really sorry to hear that. And he just said, I didn't know any of you. I didn't trust any of you. How can I turn up? How can I show up? How can I do the work? And it was kind of a jarring moment of, we were doing these lovely innovative projects and running these design thinking processes. But yeah, we completely missed the first most important thing, which was helping people turn up, show up, and do the work. And recognising that a lot of people have different ways of being able to do that. So, I guess this reflection is about the importance of that relational fabric of a social lab or of any design work really that we're doing is how do we make it possible for people to turn up and do the work? So in New Zealand, we have a term, whanaungatanga, which is kind of building a sense of family. And that's basically what we designed into every single process that we ran from that point onwards. So that young guy ended up taking us back to his marae, showing us his river. We sat on the beach and had an amazing bonfire and kind of just spoke about the world, and he talked to us about, if you're not designing for 7 generations ahead, what are you doing? And from that point, which completely changed our kind of core team's direction around how we built programs, we started building time for whanaungatanga into every single process we ran. And it basically worked as like a 30% of any program was spent time just not even doing the work, just straight up getting to know one another. And that seems kind of crazy when you talk about 30%. For some people are shaking their heads and they're like, no, it's not even enough. But 30% when you actually say that in terms of a 10-day process, you're going to spend 3 days getting to know one another. That's actually the process that we ran. So when we ran this 6-week program, we ended up having a 6-day hui, which is kind of a retreat on a marae, where we didn't even talk about any of the work that we were going to do together. We just got to know one another. So I'm really intrigued by the relational field, as we're calling it, and I believe that any designers who are particularly interested in working on social labs should start to build their understanding and their work around human relationships and how we actually create those within the lab. That's my first insight, learning. Mm-hmm. I'm also really intrigued by this shift in design that we're seeing around, strategic design and co-design. There's almost this shift towards design, almost like a facilitator. So it's a facilitator of other people doing the design work. We're kind of helping run the process. And I was coming over on the flight today down from Melbourne and reading Ezio Manzini's book, Design When Everyone Designs. I'm not sure if anyone's read it, but it's brilliant. And he was kind of critiquing this idea of becoming administrators and facilitators of a process. Just saying, it's a waste of design talent. It's not that we shouldn't be doing that work, it's that we shouldn't be losing our ability to also add into the creative process and give into it. So, really love this idea of design as a midwife, birthing something new rather than design as facilitator, which is a little bit less compelling to me. So this is back at Grove, and this is the group of people starting to do rapid prototyping. So they're not designers, they haven't got any design skills, but they're basically being compelled to start thinking about how you do this work and building their capacity to do it well. And I think that's the key thing that a couple of other people have touched on, is like this building capacity piece is huge in the co-design, social design sector. If we're the only ones doing this work, we're in trouble. We need a lot more people doing this work. Even if they're not experts, we need to work out ways that we can build the community's capacity to do this themselves. So, whilst there is a role for expert design, I think we have this growing need to shift and help people. Like, whilst everyone is a designer, not everyone's going to become a professional designer, but we can hone some of those skills. So we can hone things around ethics, we can hone things around prototyping, we can hone things around sketching and bringing things to life. We need to start working out how we can do that with communities. I'm also really intrigued by the role of design in social labs as sense-making. So when we drag this back to social labs are a strategic response to complex problems, one of the problems with responding to a complex problem is your head explodes because it's really complex. So what we do know is that design is actually really, really good at synthesizing and making abductive leaps of thinking. And so that piece around abductive thinking which not a lot of other, or I guess not a lot of industries, disciplines have that kind of mode of thinking. Synthesis is a really unique kind of role for design to play in social labs. So I'm really excited about this. Trying to remember what I was going to say for this little bit, so give me 1 second. How much time have I got left?
You've got 6 minutes.
Okay, great. Okay, so, what to say? I guess the piece I'm really interested in is almost a quote that came out of the Manzini book, but I'm just going to read very quickly, where he was kind of classifying co-design less as kind of a methodology or a particular structured way of engaging with people, but he talked about it as a vast, multifaceted conversation among individuals and groups who set design initiatives rolling at the nodes of networks they are a part of. It's a social conversation. And I thought that was a really interesting provocation as to how design can play a role in this kind of social conversation, and whether that's bringing things to life through visualizing it, or whether it's like holding the process and holding the space for other people to make that sense. So this was a process that we ran in New Zealand back with the Lifehack team. And we were actually getting the teams to make sense of their own experiences and go out and start doing some design research. It was very kind of low scale, but some of the kind of prototypes that they built to come back and talk to were just kind of fascinating and really blew me away. So, yeah, I guess I really believe that design has this opportunity to show leadership in this space. And I guess as the community champion of social labs, which is a platform set up off the back of Zaid Hassan's book, I'm really kind of asking you all to come and join us. I want to see more designers in the social lab sector. There's a lot of people from community development backgrounds. There's quite a lot of people from research and evaluation backgrounds, but I actually don't really feel the design community is kind of flowing into social labs yet. So I'm really excited, and I think the work that Social Design Sydney are going to do to bring Liz over and run some co-design labs is a really exciting first step in that. So I'm hoping to be involved in some way too. So yeah, those are my insights. I'll stick these slides up for everyone so you can get all of those if you need to. But thank you very much for having me up here, and cheers.
All right. Sam Ray is a strategic designer and social labs practitioner who has worked across environmental conservation, youth mental health, resilient livelihoods and more. He's currently leading the change to build a community of practice for the social labs sector, as well as working with Zaid Hassan's new team at Roller Strategies on labs like Grove 3547. Born a Brit, but now an honorary Kiwi, he's currently living in the hills of the Yarra Ranges in Victoria.